Welcome to another episode of the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Picciuto, and I'm super happy to have my good friend, Jessica Miller, a.k.a. Jess Lamastay, with me today. Jess, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today. So
I'm stoked to be here.
That's great. Tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, how we know each other.
Sure. So we know each other through your twin sister, Jess. Her and I are teachers together. So we've been friends for 4 years. And John, you started shooting pictures of me for yoga, I guess like 2 years ago at this point. So that's how we met. And born and raised in Jersey. Teach a lot of yoga on the side.
Namaste.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like
What do you teach the same grade as Jess?
I do, 4th grade.
Nice.
It's a lot.
Remote.
Hence the yoga.
Yeah.
It's been a tough year, so I feel like the yoga practice has sort of saved me and the kids that I teach.
How long have you been doing yoga, teaching yoga?
3 years.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Done some pretty cool stuff that we can't necessarily talk about, but
That's true.
pretty important bending stuff.
I mean, you make it that sounds naughty.
Oh, and that's just people.
Is that just where my head went?
Yes. It was important people
Oh.
being taught
Oh,
important
yes.
things.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. I have taught yoga to some pretty famous people, but
Yeah.
I can't really talk about it.
Award-winning people.
This makes me sound awesome. It's okay.
It was awesome.
It was pretty cool.
Don't belittle yourself.
Okay. It was great.
So I thought, obviously, we have had a plethora of relationship conversations over the last couple of years.
Yes.
I thought today would be a good day for us to hash out some of our pasts, histories,
Let's do
advice. And I thought a good place to start would be, I mean, we're the same age, I think, right? You're 34?
Mm-hmm.
I'm 35, and you are divorced.
Yes.
How is that?
It's definitely not the most common amongst our age group. I feel like we're in a space where lots of our friends are married or just having kids. And so I do feel like it's an odd thing to say at 35 that you're divorced. However, it's part of my story. And so I feel like talking about divorce doesn't have to be something taboo or something that you shy away from. Because the truth is, I think a lot of people feel certain things in their relationship, but they don't always want to talk about it or honor it. And so it comes out later in life.
Obviously, the people at home can't see me nodding my head in agreement, but I do agree with that. And I thought it was important to bring up because there's such a stigma about divorce, and which is crazy considering 58% of
It might even be more.
Yeah, well, post-pandemic,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Get locked in a house for a year with
Get me out of there. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how much do you think that impacts like your dating life now? Do you think people like, I don't know if they hold it against you or you have like a weird conversation about it? Because like I've gone on dates with people who've been divorced, and it's not like a deal breaker for me, but I would imagine for some people that might be something that they're like, oh.
Yeah, no one's ever come out and said that to me before, but you definitely get a sense of the people that are curious about it and want to know a little bit more about like how I came to be divorced and how I've learned from it. And then you have people that I think are intimidated that there's like an ex-husband in a former life. We didn't have any kids together, so there's no communication. There's no need to be in each other's lives anymore. So I think that there's a level of intimidation.
Sure.
And then also, like, I'm not your average 30-year-old girl that's racing to the altar wanting to have the big wedding with the bells and the whistle. Like, I've been there and done that. Yeah. So I feel like I'm ready to meet someone that doesn't need the show. And I think, to be fair, some people want that. And
Sure.
that's great. But, like, that's not my MO for getting married again. So I think that there's, like, different forms of reactions to guys when I tell them that I'm divorced.
I think that's fair. Like I said, I've obviously dated girls who've been divorced and some who were probably married when we were on the date, but can't say whether that's necessarily a fact or not. How's like the last year been? I mean, I know you've had some boyfriends, you've had some on and off things, pandemic dating. We've had a lot of conversations about the last year. How are you doing today versus 12 months ago?
I think I'm doing a lot better than I was 12 months ago. I feel like the pandemic sort of forced everybody to slow down, and it, for a while dating was not something that people like, it wasn't acceptable in the pandemic. So we were having FaceTime dates, but we weren't necessarily meeting strangers. And so I think that forced the conversations to change. I think that the type of people that I was talking to was starting to shift a little bit. Like, because the truth is, you really had to make an effort if you wanted to date in the pandemic. It was not easy.
Big time effort.
Yeah. And so I think, and I imagine for girls too, like the ones that actually want to be there and put forth the effort into getting to know you are going to stand out a lot more than the people that are just there to get laid.
Yeah.
So, because
I mean, I wasn't getting laid during the pandemic. I mean, I know we have different experiences over the last year. My thing was I had a really hard time with doing like the FaceTiming dates, the phone call dates, and like I had some good conversations and some quote unquote relationships or talking tos or whatever you wanted to call it at the beginning of the pandemic, but I just couldn't sustain it. Like I'm a very, in-person vibes, chemistry kind of person, and all of that texting and FaceTiming, it just like was not.
It wasn't
like,
you.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned like maybe that's easier for you, but
yeah, I think because I think being on Zoom all day with your students, and then I was teaching yoga on Zoom, it was just like a lot of time on screen, so it didn't feel that strange to have a FaceTime date.
Okay.
And again, like the guys that were like, fuck no, I would never have it's like, all right, well, what? Then your option is like, what? Because
you could weed those guys out right away, right?
Right.
Because they were like, I definitely want to hook up with this girl. I have no interest in dating.
Yeah,
her.
like I don't want to talk to you. So I'm like, well, wait. I mean, that's kind of all we have to do right now, and especially in like the very first couple of months.
Did you feel that you were able to get to know someone really well over like Zoom or FaceTime? Because like to me, it's so awkward. Like I've never met this person before.
Yeah.
And the first time I'm quote unquote meeting them is on FaceTime.
Yeah. I think it's more intimate than
it is.
a date.
It freaks me out though.
Yeah.
Like, that's why
it's like there is no distractions. Like there is no waiter coming over to take your drink order. There's no people watching. There's no like sipping a drink to like kill awkward silence. It's literally just you and this person. And so it became very clear those people that were comfortable enough to be able to have conversations with a stranger on FaceTime, and then the people that were like just
like
stuck.
Me. Like this is terrible.
Which is, it's awkward. So there's no, I wouldn't necessarily rule somebody out if they struggle to have a conversation, but I think you can have chemistry on a FaceTime. I think you could, absolutely. Like there can be, first of all, the person could look like their photos or not.
Yeah, right.
So that was obvious. But I think based on the conversation, like you can absolutely flirt over FaceTime. And so
it's interesting. I think for me, the barrier was in number one, I hate FaceTime in general. Like I hate FaceTiming my family and my friends. Like it's just not my mode of communication. I'd rather text. I'd rather be on a phone call, whatever. So let's take that to the side. It's just to me, like I'm a very physical person in terms of like in body, in person kind of chemistry. And like, I just felt like even the more I did it, I would have 2 or 3 drinks beforehand just to loosen myself up. It was't doing it for me. Like I felt like it was like,
well, it's missing something. It's like, you don't get the end of date kiss at the end. Like, yeah. I mean, most of the FaceTime dates that were successful eventually led to a real date because it does get old. So it's like there's only so many times we can like get buzzed together over FaceTime. I will say it's awesome because like you have the best excuse if the date is going poorly. Like like, oh fuck my Wi-Fi. Like literally I've had to, end lots of conversations quickly, but I will say that I think for 2 or 3 dates, like you can get enough of a sense of a person in order to meet them in person and be like, oh, like I could see this going well. Now, none of those relationships necessarily panned out, so maybe there's something to be said about it. But, we did what we had to do as single people in a pandemic because the alternative was to just isolate. Which worked for some people, but I
had a productive year. It wasn't sexually productive, but it was productive
and
in
that
other
counts.
ways.
Like you put your
Yeah.
energy into something.
Yeah.
For me, I think because I was finally starting to feel confident enough in dating again, then it was like I felt like I was cut off at the knees. I was like, shit, I was just gaining momentum.
I could feel that too in our conversations because we have known each other, I think, 4 years. And would you get divorced 5 years ago? 4 years ago?
No, it's just over 2 years. I mean,
okay.
like official, but coming up on 3 years. So
I feel like you might have split when we first met.
Yeah,
Because my
yeah,
sister
yeah.
was very much trying to set us up.
yes,
Right.
I do remember that
And-
repeatedly. John Mayer concert. I remember.
Oh, right, yeah. Wait, you didn't go to that?
No, I was on a date.
Oh, right, yeah.
Didn't work out.
You
I
missed
should have
a
fucking gone.
great fucking concert. Holy shit, I forgot about that. Oh, that was so long ago. That was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy. But yeah, like I had noticed, like our conversations, you were starting to like feel yourself again. You're like, yeah, I'm like ready to do this. Like I've had some shitty dates, I've met some shitty guys, but like you were starting to come into your own, and then bam,
Yeah.
we're stuck in home.
Yeah, and I think my attitude dating before the pandemic was very much like chasing another relationship. Like I was watching my ex in a relationship, he was moving on, and I was like, well, fuck, I need to move on. And so when you are in dating for another reason, like it has to be about you and the
Sure.
things that you want. And if you're just looking to fill a void and to find the next one, then like that's a losing game.
How much pressure did you feel post-divorce, obviously in a social media driven world that we live in, to quote unquote win the divorce, to put on the happy face even if you were struggling, or be out and about even if you wanted to stay home and do anything? How much did you feel like pressure to kind of feel like you won it even though you may not have been doing great?
I would say, and our divorce was amicable, and to this day I have nothing but positive things to say about my ex. But I would say part of me wanted to put on a face like, it's all good. I walked away from this marriage, so like what should I be upset about? And that's the other thing that I think is a misconception. Like just because you're the one that decides, okay, this relationship is no longer serving me and we both deserve more, it doesn't mean that the person that walked away isn't grieving that relationship. So I think I had a hard time sort of moving past it, even though physically we had separated. So I would say, what was the question? This is what happens all the time.
How much of that post?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So I wanted to put on a face for other people. But I spent my life doing that. Like that's who I was in my relationship. And then yoga sort of really forced me to like look at myself in the mirror and do like a deep dive inward and realize like how much are you showing other people because you feel like that's what they want to see. And so I feel like I sort of dropped the act. And I keep it pretty real on my Instagram, and you can see the days that like I'm doing great, you can see the days I'm feeling myself, you can see the days that like I could use a little extra self-love. So I would say now I'm pretty honest. Like I don't need to impress anybody. I don't need to convince anyone that I'm feeling a certain way. Like it's none of their fucking business. So if my honesty and vulnerability makes people uncomfortable, then
I appreciate that.
They should look another way.
I had this conversation with a podcast guest that I've got coming up soon yesterday, and it was how time and age has so positively impacted my ability to be comfortable in my own skin. And to be fair, obviously there's a lot less social pressure on me to look a certain way, act a certain way, do a lot of things, and inherently that's what happens to white men in America.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see that it kind of goes both ways, because like obviously with time and age you have found yourself a little bit deeper, a little bit closer to who you are and like what you love. And I don't know if that's with age or time or whatever it is, but it's such a freeing feeling.
Yeah, to not give a shit what other people think about you.
Or give a shit about the things that you want to give a shit about.
Yes. And I think, I think some of it comes with time and age. And actually I was sharing this in a yoga class a couple weeks ago, like depth, right? Like you can't force somebody to have depth. They can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. And because, I've been through divorce, I've lost a parent, my life experiences have like created a lot of depth, and I've experienced heartache and pain and grief. And I think when you overcome those circumstances. Like, you're a stronger person for it. And
Absolutely.
so I can't fault someone that I'm dating that has never been divorced or has never experienced loss of a parent. Like, that's not on them. But if they haven't done the own work on themselves to realize what's important to them, like, that's when you see the difference.
Do you find, so obviously you and I have drastically different life experiences, but like when you're on a first date or second date with a person, do you find people who lack that level of life experience you typically don't get along with? Or do you see a barrier in place already as to how far you could see that particular thing going?
I think it's pretty clear on a first date or first conversation. You know, like, again, like, you don't have to have experienced what I have in order
Sure.
to connect with me, but get a little curious, ask some questions, or try to relate in a way where, you know, like, you can connect on some level. And then the guys that are just sort of like, oh, like, I'm really, really sorry to hear that. Like, they can't, and again, it's not their fault, but they
Right.
don't.
If they're unable to relate to that tragedy in any way,
Right? Like,
Right.
anything traumatic that they've experienced.
or if they like immediately try to change the conversation topic to,
Yeah, or
oh,
it's
by
just-
the way, what's your favorite movie? It's
Yeah,
like, whoa.
fucking surface level conversation drives me crazy. Like, I don't want to talk about the fucking weather.
Yeah, I do.
I'm
I'm just kidding. It's gonna snow.
like,
I'm just
what,
kidding.
where you vacation, don't give a shit.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure, we could talk about where you went to college and like the things you like to do for fun, but like, I just like to go in.
yeah. So, what are the important topics, like, or questions that you want to get out of on a first date?
I want to know,
Like, give me your top three. We don't have
top
to go.
three. What have you learned about yourself from other relationships? I think that's
Great
like,
question.
be a little self-reflective. What are your intentions for dating? Which sounds like so intimidating to ask on a date.
You know the biggest problem. I'm sorry to interrupt you. The
That's
biggest
right.
problem that I have with that question is that in my past, and not now, but in my past, I've taken that question and given the answer that I think that the person that I'm with wants to hear.
Well, that's your problem.
That was my problem. But don't you find that that is a thing that both male and females do often?
Sure.
Because that question is very personal and very difficult, and it can pose conflict. Not like a fight, but like if I'm looking for a relationship and you're looking for a one-night stand, that question can lead to the end of the evening.
Right. But I think as long as you are clear with what you want, then if that's not what the other person wants to hear, that's their problem.
Yeah. I just think my biggest qualm with that question is that a lot of times when I ask it, I think I'm told what they think I want to hear because I used to say the thing that I think they wanted to hear.
Right.
So I've gotten to the point where I've unabashedly said, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. And if these are not the two things that you want, that's okay.
Yeah.
You're a great person. I'm a great person. We're just not matching up.
Yep.
But a lot of times, and even today, like when I had a date the other night, I was very open, very honest about what I want, what I'm looking for, and they were on the same page. We're going to go out again.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
But it is a tricky question.
It is a tricky question, but I also feel like
I also have trust issues.
and you don't know if the other person's being honest in their answer to you, but I do feel like, and I've gotten to the point where I used to be scared of the answer. So if they were like, oh, like, I don't really know what I'm looking for, then, you know, I would be like, well, fuck, like, they don't want a relationship. Like, I would always make it about me.
Yeah. Well, that's easy to do.
Yeah.
Because they would want the thing that you say you want if you were the
Right.
person.
I'm like, let's just get on the same page. Like, are you looking for a serious relationship? Yes or no? And be honest. And it's a bummer if I like you and I'm into you and you say no, but at least I know that on date one and not after investing more time with you.
How often in your experience have you found that question being answered the way you want it to be, only to shortly be let down?
Well, I'm still dating. So
Fair point.
I haven't heard. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, it's a combination of people not knowing what they want, which is fair.
And like, it's been a weird year.
It's been a
And-
weird
yeah.
year. But I do think a lot of times people are like, okay, well, yeah, we're on dating apps to be in relationships. So that's the answer. Like, that's what you say. But your actions like have to match up. And like, yeah, if your intentions aren't pure and you're not honest, like, get out of here.
I agree. What's the third thing that you're trying to get out of on a first date?
I want to know the things that they're passionate about.
outside of work.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like what like really sparks joy for you? What are things that you care about? You know, because that sheds a lot of light on who they are, like behind the mask.
Yeah.
I don't really give a shit what you do for a living. Yeah, yes.
The mask of self.
Yes. You know, like I don't care about your, you know, like sure, if you love your job, that's awesome. But like, what are the things that like really get you going?
I try to go as long as I possibly can on a first date, or, you know, texting or on an app or whatever, without talking about work.
Yeah.
And it's one of the first things that comes up all the time. But I'm so not interested in it.
Yeah.
I don't care what you do. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care about any of those things, because they're not going to impact me whatsoever in terms of a relationship.
Right.
If you're a teacher, if you're a firefighter, if you're a fucking attorney, like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I hope you're happy and you enjoy what you do, but that's like as much as
I think that's what I'm looking for. Like, what makes you happy? So if your job is it, like, awesome. But I just like, what are the things that I can't see on the profile that I want to know? You know, and of course, like, do you want a family? Like all those questions. But I do feel like on a first date, it's like, okay, like, do I want to give you more of my time for a second date? And like, what do I need to hear in order to decide yes or no?
How often do you find yourself on a first date, and I'm extremely guilty of this, like feeling out what the like chemistry is there or isn't there, and how much does that impact like a second date? Because I've had some really good first dates where I didn't feel any sort of physical connection or attraction right away, and I've tried to go out again and it still wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's not like a looks thing, right? It's just like a spark, a
Yeah,
chemistry,
you feel it.
something,
Yeah.
right. How much of a factor does that play into a second date with a person?
I feel like on a first date, it's a no or a maybe. Like, I'll leave a first date and be like, nope, like that's not happening again. Or like, okay, I'm curious. Let me go on a second date.
So it's not just yes or no. It's no or
It's
maybe.
no or maybe.
Interesting.
Like, and then from there on the second date, give it time for the chemistry. Because I think sometimes it is hard on a first date to feel like you want it. Yeah, comfortable. You don't know how they are in a dating situation. Also with COVID, you're like, makeouts on a first date. Like, you're like, I don't even know what the fuck to do. So you may like, it's a weird.
It used to be like STD concerns, and now it's like, oh my God, don't cough.
Yeah.
Don't breathe.
Yeah. It's crazy how our standards have, it's just changed. But I will say by a second date, I'll know.
Okay.
And, you know, I've like, well, maybe I'll give it one more. But it's like, why are we convincing ourselves?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's hard enough to date, and then it's also hard enough to find someone that you want to go out with, that you spend the time on the apps with, then texting with, then exchanging social medias with, and then being like, okay, we're going to go out. You've invested a lot of time leading up to that first date.
Yep.
And it almost feels like, oh, well, I wasted all that fucking time.
Yeah.
So.
And I love that expression, like wasted time, because I try to not say that anymore.
But it is.
But I do feel like, what have you learned about yourself in that moment? Like, I feel like even on a bad first date, like, oh, fuck, what a waste of time. And I'm like, no, but you know what? Like, I stepped out of my comfort zone, or I look fucking great tonight. Like,
you have a highly, highly, highly positive mental attitude that I think has been born over the last couple of years of shit that you've dealt with.
Yeah.
That I don't share.
Yeah.
That I would love to share. That I'd love to be like,
you can. I mean,
yeah, I'm a pessimistic, skeptical person.
I used to be the exact same way. Ask my girlfriends that have known me my
I'll
whole
start
life.
doing more yoga and lighting more candles and chanting. And,
burning Palo Santo.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And see if I can get there.
I will say, I was the biggest pessimist. I was the Debbie Downer in my group of friends. Like, there was always something that was missing or something we could have had. Like, that was my personality. That was like the role that I played in our friend group.
And you're no longer friends with any of those people.
No, I am.
Okay.
But, you know, we've been friends for so long that, you know, they're sticking around no matter what. But I will say, like, the positive side of me, like, really didn't come out until I would say, like, after my mom passed away and I was able to deal with all of that. Like, I can now even look back and say, like, you know, of course I'm, you know, I would give anything to bring her back. But if she hadn't have passed, there's no way that I would have done all this work on myself. Mm-hmm. And if I hadn't have gotten divorced, if I had stayed in a comfortable, safe relationship, then there's no way I would have learned all of this
Sure.
about, you know, who I am as as an individual, not as like someone that's coupled.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that. And unfortunately, another thing that you learn with life and time is that it's most of the shitty things that happen to you that bear the largest imprint on who you are as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
And more shitty things happen as you get older.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
that's life.
Yeah, that's life.
Yeah.
It's one of the pros and blessings, I would say, because I wouldn't be who I am today without all of the other, terrible things that I've had to deal with. And
yeah.
I've lived a blessed life, and I'm not confused about that at all. But like, obviously, my most growth has occurred because of shitty
because
things.
of hardship. Well, I feel like how can you appreciate things that are awesome and great if you haven't experienced it on the other side?
Absolutely.
So if you don't let yourself go to the darkest place ever, then that light isn't going to feel as bright and warm and loving.
Yep.
As it would be if you allowed yourself to go to those places that are, uncomfortable. So yeah, I would say the positivity, but it's a choice. I mean, you can choose to look at things of a place like fucking dating in a pandemic sucks. This blows. I'm never going to find anyone. Right. But if you're putting that out into the universe, whatever you believe, it's exactly what's going to come back to you.
I'll give you that. I am starting to realize that.
I'm proud to hear you say that.
It's all the yoga that we do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. The video that you haven't watched yet.
I watched it.
You did?
I didn't
you
do it,
okay.
but I watched it. I mean, I'm easing into it. I'm an old
fine.
man with a brittle body. You've said you've been teaching yoga for, I think, 4 or 5 years.
3 years.
3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've obviously been a big proponent in my life of trying new things, podcasting, photography, writing, whatever it might be. And I love the feeling that I get when I find something that I love.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about yoga specifically that when you do it, when you're leading a class, online, in person, etc., that you love?
Oh, there's so many things. I think first thing is the energy that you get from your student, watching them sort of morph in front of you, and not just physically, just watching their spirits get brighter, watching themselves carry themselves lighter. It's so cool to watch people go through a class. You walk into a class, you see them stressed out, they're on their mat, they're working out their frustrations from the day. And then the way, the sigh that you hear from them at the end of practice, it's it's just it's so fucking creepy. It's contagious. Yes, this is why I do what I do. I want to make people feel better. And I mean, if it wasn't for yoga, I don't think that I would have been able to come out as strong through hardship. So I feel if I can bring that out in other people, and I can even just change one thought over the course of their day, I've done my job.
I like that.
So I think making people feel good makes me feel good.
I like that. I mean, I would imagine that's why you're a teacher.
Yeah. I mean, it's just you just want to help people. And then as far as my own practice, I mean, I got addicted to it because, first of all, the heat, I mean, just that constant sweat, the detox of, whatever you ate, drank, but also I had a teacher once that was they're prayer beads. So for me, it felt like I was going to church, temple, the gym, and therapy in an hour. And I was I've never felt that sort of release before. And once it clicks for you, you're I can do this the rest of my life.
I like that. I've in my life, I've been a big proponent of taking failures that I've had, whether it be work-wise, personal life-wise, and trying to turn them into a positive. Last year I took a job.
See, you can be positive.
I just said I tried.
Okay, keep going.
I'm kidding. But yeah, so last year I had a job, I got laid off, threw me in a whirlwind, not really sure where to go, what to do. And then I hopped in my car, I drove cross country, took 1 million photographs. And I really think I quote unquote found myself, as cheesy as that sounds. I am more comfortable in my body today.
That's
in
amazing.
the things that I'm doing personally, professionally, etc., than I was 12 months ago.
Yeah.
What type of failure have you had in your life, from a work perspective, from a professional perspective with your marriage, and how have you taken those failures, whether perceived or actual, and turn them into a positive?
Yeah, I mean, my profession, so before I was a teacher, I worked in PR. So I did the corporate thing, I worked in fashion, and for me, it's so funny to reflect on the person that I was before I found yoga and before I became a school teacher. I'm still in that person, but it's just, it was very much I want the newest things. I want to be at the fanciest restaurants, hanging out with the coolest people. And so I would say that switching careers, while something I wanted to always do, was extremely humbling. So I don't want to say it was a failure to switch careers, but like I fell on my ass when I got into teaching.
Sure.
Because right when I transitioned into education is when I was thinking about getting divorced and then following through with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like really feeling like you have to do things on your own, right? Like I wasn't financially supported anymore. I was, I had a career that was paying me $1 a day. So it was like, this is on you. Like you can't ask anybody for help. Like you got to pick yourself up. And I, so thankful for your sister because she caught me many a times crying in my classroom, but like teaching is a blessing and a curse. Like if you're having a bad day, you can't bring it into the classroom. Like the kids never got to see me, cry at lunchtime when I was having a breakdown. And so I would say that first year having to teach on my own, not having like my person to call when I was struggling, was really hard. But now I kind of feel like I can do anything on my own. Once you realize like how strong you actually are, you're like, so I can do hard.
So it's a matter of just like taking the lesson that the moment has for you and then just growing from it.
Yeah. And like you have to let yourself fail. Like I think so often people are scared. I mean, my marriage failed.
Yeah.
But it's like that happened. It's done. It's over. So how can I learn from it so I don't make those decisions again? I don't even want to call them mistakes, honestly.
That's why I asked the question and I say perceived failure because a marriage not working is not a failure, right? It is a perceived failure. Yeah. It is a conscious uncoupling of two people, but a failure it's not. Like a marriage is not either a win or a loss.
Yeah.
It is a relationship, and relationships succeed and they fail. But at the end of the day, you are not a failure for having been divorced.
Yeah.
But I like to kind of dive into like what you learned about yourself through that process, and it seems like you're like a brand new.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's really easy, especially in like North Jersey, to feel like, okay, by this age you have,
married kids,
married kids, like, and oh my God, I was in a race.
That's the world, though.
It is the world, but I feel like it's really magnified here.
It's keeping up with the Joneses.
Yes. And literally nobody was making me feel this way but myself. Like even my ex was like, yeah, whatever you want. Like, but he's like, what are you spinning out for right now? Like there's no need. You're in a competition with yourself.
Yeah.
So I would say, I learned that like I don't need people to feel happy. Mm-hmm. I think if you're not 100% in it with yourself, like whoever you're with can't make you feel that way.
I completely agree.
So I will never, and that's a lot of pressure to put on someone. Like,
yeah, or yourself.
Yeah, but like on my ex, it was like, okay, you are responsible for my happiness. You like on my, he couldn't handle that. That wasn't his burden or whatever to bear. Like that was on me. But because of, how long we had known each other, it was just sort of like, we knew how to work together in that way. But once I realized like, wow, like, you can't ask that of someone.
Expect that of someone else.
No, that's not their job.
It's their job to pick you up when you need to be picked up, but not like 24/7, 365.
Yeah, and to be constantly like, yes, you feel like you're great, you're amazing. It's like you have to be the one that's giving yourself the pep talk. Like It's nice to have people in your corner, of course, but you have to believe in yourself. And like that confidence lacked for me for a long time. I mean, even in high school, I remember just like always sort of like not believing things about myself. And so, yeah, to like come into that in your 30s, you wake up and you're like, wow, like I'm not the same person.
Is that a societal thing? Because obviously it's got to be entirely more prevalent in a woman to be questioning their own self in high school and college. And I just would imagine it's just societal pressures inherently as a woman, because I never felt that way, I guess, until like my late 20s, where I felt like I needed to be doing more or making more money or having nicer things until I was like there.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if that was something that was just inherently in yourself or something that you just felt from
And I remember having conversations with my mom when I was younger. And I would always say to her, and I don't know where this came from, like both my parents were working parents. My mom didn't even have a college degree. She busted her ass. She had my older brother when she was young, never finished college. And I would have conversations with her about, like, Mom, I'll just marry a rich guy. And she's like, I don't know who raised you, because that is never something that I would teach you. And she always used to remind me, like, knock it off. Like, you're going to have to support yourself. And it's just interesting how that manifested and
into marrying someone
that, could financially support me and, was open-minded to me switching careers and making less money. And then to find myself in the situation I am now, it's like, my fucking mom was right.
Yeah, they usually are.
Yeah. But I think, so it wasn't my family that sort of put that on me. I think growing up in Ridgewood, New Jersey, like there's a lot of pressures there.
Class, yeah.
Yeah. More so to go to the right colleges, travel abroad, move to Manhattan right after college. Like there was all these sort of like, why would you live at home? And I lived at home for 2 years and felt super insecure about it. So I think it's a combination of society. And then I think, it's also sort of where you grew up, the people that you chose to surround yourself with. But yeah, I would say, and even now, I mean, you still see sort of society feeding people these ideas.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's the brave that sort of are like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to hop out of this hamster wheel.
I completely agree with you. And I think I've mentioned this on like 3 or 4 podcasts now. And it's the thing that I hold the most resentment to in my youth was that when I was in high school, you're told these are the 5 colleges that you can apply to and get into.
Mm-hmm.
You go to college and the counselor tells you these are the 5 programs that you can get into and graduate from. You get out of college, these are the 3 places that you can go get a job for. And no time from 17 to 25 did anyone ever take the time to ask me, like, John, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
What will, like, make you happy? It's like, no, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get a business degree. I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to make money. But, like, none of those things were things that I necessarily wanted to do, cared to do, felt like I had to do.
Yeah.
I had to do all those things.
Yep.
But it's a shame that, 35, I am now figuring out the things that, as lame as it sounds, lights my soul on fire.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that there's none of that at a young age.
Yeah.
It's always with time and with life lessons that you realize it doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter how many nice things I have. It's my family, it's my friends, and it's the things that I do on a daily basis that make me happy.
Yep.
And it's one of the main reasons why I started this podcast. Like, I'm not a guru. I'm not a Gary Vee. I'm not a fucking Robbins or whatever his name is. But, like, I want people to know that, like, it's okay at any age to stop doing what you're doing, and that's okay.
And pursue something that, lights your soul on fire. But I think it's so interesting what you just said. Like, it's a shame that, like, just now, like, I'm figuring, but, like, how fucking lucky are you that you figured it out?
Very.
Because there are people that will spend their whole entire lives in relationships that don't fulfill them, in jobs that don't fulfill them, and they don't have the courage to listen to themselves.
Absolutely.
And so I have moments of like, oh, can't believe this is where I'm at 35. Like, never thought that this would be my place. But I'm like, you know what? I would rather be here than be in my 40s, in my 50s, learning all of this like later down the road when there's other people involved and it's more complicated. Like, no, let's just fucking get honest now.
It's an unfortunate thing that you learn it late in life, and I think we're still young, and it's just this perception that we're old, and millennials and Gen Zs and all this dumb social media bullshit. But it's just unfortunate that these lessons come with time,
right? And
I couldn't learn this 20 years ago.
No,
at 15, I wish someone said, "John, here's a camera. Pick this up." See if you like it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If someone would have done that, you would have been like, no. Like, your
Probably.
brain wasn't...
I would have been like, I have to play sports. I have to, like, do the cool thing. And, and that's totally, totally true.
I would say, and because, like, obviously your brain doesn't even fully develop until you're in your 20s. So I find, even as a teacher, like, I'm watching these 9 and 10-year-olds struggle, and it's like, this happened on the blacktop, or this is going on at home. And, like, I just, all I want to do is remind them that, like, you can get yourself out of anything, like it's just you. Like, of course you let things affect you, that your friend, I mean, you just forget about like how influenced you are by your friends and what people are
and
saying.
It's so much worse now with social media.
Yeah,
for
and you
these
just want to
kids.
remind them like this isn't fucking important, but they can't hear it, even if you know, like they're never going to hear it until they're ready to hear it.
And when you bring that up, it does remind me that like I wouldn't have been capable of learning those lessons at that age.
Right.
You're 100% right.
It comes.
I
with,
just wish
it comes
like
with time.
at a certain point at a younger age, I was more exposed to like creative outlets that I didn't necessarily have.
Right.
I'm super thankful for now, but didn't have at a younger age.
Yeah.
And that's just my gripe for the day.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's an excellent point. I think to be reminded that there is no one way to do something. And if something doesn't feel right for you, like find what does.
Yeah. I think the two big things I would like to accomplish with these conversations that I have with people is just how different everyone's path is and how no one's path is right.
Right.
It's right for you. It's right for me, but it's not right for everyone.
Yeah.
And if you're able to realize that at 15 or 35, great. But the sooner the better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. The sooner you can step into like, this is me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The easier your life is going to feel.
100%.
But if you fight it, right, then, I mean, you're just like, that's a constant battle.
I completely agree with
Yeah.
you. What inspires you? Like what gets you going? What makes you wake up in the morning being like, I'm going to fuck today up? In a positive way. Obviously.
Yeah. What inspires me? I mean, I think, you know, this sounds cheesy, but like I want to make my mom proud.
It's not cheesy.
And I think that she would be really proud of the human I've turned into. She didn't really meet, I mean, I know she knows this part of me, but she didn't see me as this person. So I think she's a constant inspiration. My family, like I want to, not make them proud, but I just want to be better for my family. I want to be better for myself. I want to be better for my students. So I think I always bring it back to myself and just how can you do today better?
Yeah.
What did you learn yesterday that you don't want to do again? What do you think you could fix? Because I am a constant work in progress.
So is everyone.
Yeah, but people are like, practice makes perfect. It's like, nope, it's just practice makes progress over and over and over again.
Practice makes progress. I'm definitely going to steal that.
Yeah, because...
What gives you confidence?
What gives me confidence? Ooh, that's a tough one. What? I would say, honestly, when I'm like on my yoga mat, like no one can fuck with me. I feel like
can you carry that feeling to the rest of your day?
I try to. That's like the real yoga practice. It's like, okay, hold on to this for as long as you possibly can. What else makes me feel I love riding with the top down, music blasting. Like sometimes I'm like really feeling myself when I'm driving.
Like that too.
Yeah, like just like good music and like like that can really turn your day around.
Even though you missed a great concert, Johnny Boy. Yeah.
Damn. Maybe I'll listen to him on the way home.
You should.
But I think being able to look at myself in the mirror and be like, you fucking got this. You're amazing. And I don't give a shit what you look like. It's none of that. It's just like...
Yeah, I don't gain confidence from like the person I see in the mirror. It's something inside of you. And it's not like what you perceive through your eyeballs.
Yeah,
it's something innate that I like to uncover because I think if enough people can start to feel comfortable and confident in their everyday actions, they can start leading a life that they're more wanting to lead.
Yeah. And it's infectious, right? Like, when you're around somebody that has good energy. And it wasn't really until I was like in the yoga space where I was like, oh, like you can pick up when someone is like good energy, like what they are putting out there is something that you want, you're attracted to, you're drawn to. Yep. And I'm talking about friendships, relationships, whatever.
Yeah.
Versus the people where you're like, oh, like you can just feel it when someone is insecure.
Something you learn as you get older.
Yeah. But I don't think confidence necessarily has to be the way that you look. It's the way that you feel. And so what do you need? I mean, the number of dance parties I've had in my basement by myself in this pandemic that I do post on Instagram because I'm like, fuck it, who doesn't love a dance party? And the number of responses that I get of people being like, oh my God, kitchen dance parties are the best. It's like, yeah, like feel yourself out when you're like
100%.
Love it. Like own it.
I think the funniest thing for me whenever I see those things, and I do laugh at them a lot, is because like 82 or 5% of people who are on Instagram watch Instagram without like the sound on.
Yeah.
So every time I see you dancing in your kitchen, it's without sound.
That's amazing.
And it is hilarious because
Yes.
I'm like, what is she listening to? And I watch it whole through, and then I play the sound, and then it's just funny to like, what do I think it is versus what is it?
Yeah. And then how many people just keep scrolling?
Oh, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You've done some really cool shit with yoga, and obviously we're not going to get into like specifics, but outside of being a teacher and outside of being a yoga teacher, what's like your biggest dream? Like what, we're young, we've got 60 years left to live, hopefully. What's like your biggest dream that you hope to get out of the rest of your time here on Earth?
Oh, man.
Or like one of.
I would love to travel more.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
COVID.
or any. I mean, I was fortunate enough to travel last summer and take a 6-week road trip across the country. And that opened my eyes to sort of how much there is in this world to explore.
Yeah.
Like I, used to just, no, like take me to the beach. I want the Caribbean. I want to lay on the, on the beach for a week.
Yep.
And now I feel like, wow, like there's so much beauty out there to see. And there is something about standing at the base of a mountain and looking up and being like, wow, like my problems are nothing.
Yeah,
It's
for
just, it's such a refreshing experience. So like, I want more of those moments in my life. Like just like finding some peace and quiet in places that I never would have considered visiting before.
I like that.
Yeah. So travel, I mean, I would love to
See the world.
do yoga everywhere in the world.
Little Pyramid of Giza.
Maybe even open a yoga
downward.
studio. Yeah. I don't even know. I think it's something that it's changed my life. And so if I can just,
Keep doing it.
yeah, like I don't want to
touching more
push it on
with it.
people,
Yeah.
but I'm like, holy fucking shit. If you just open your heart to this, it could change your life too. So I think that will forever just follow me, even if it's just in conversations with people.
I like that. I'm going to pay you a bit of a compliment. We've been friends for a few years now, and I think the person that you are today is not leaps and bounds, but you are a brighter, sunnier, more genuinely awesome
Thank
person
you.
today than when we met. I think it would be easy to take the trauma that you've dealt with the passing of your mother and a divorce and have those be, damaged parts of yourself that could easily make you be a completely different way. And I like to think of like trauma and damage as like we're human beings, we're like crumpled up pieces of paper, right? Like at the end of the day, we all start up as a mess, and then like you just start trying to push out the edges and like kind of smooth out everything that's going on in your life. And I think you're getting pretty flat and pretty straight and pretty smooth. And
Thanks.
it's like it's really nice, and it's really great to kind of see how far you've come in such a short period of time.
You're making me
being our
blush over
friend.
here.
Don't cry.
Aw.
I'm gonna say that this is one of my more favorite conversations that I've had. This was good, and obviously we'll have to have you come on the pod again. I like to finish up my podcast with 2 important questions.
Okay.
The first question is, are you happy
Yes.
today and every day, or just today?
Today, I would say, every day, no.
Mm-hmm.
I have some bad days. I mean, you know I had one 2 days ago.
Yeah, that's true.
But I would say in general, like I'm happy with the person I am today.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great. My second question is, I like to finish up the podcast with a recommendation. That could be a book, a movie, a TV show, a vacation spot, literally anything. And I don't like to plan one before coming in, and that's why I like to spring it on my guests last minute. But what's something that you recently consumed, or something that you did that you would like to recommend?
I love Glennon Doyle's book Untamed. I mean, it's all over Instagram. She's pretty incredible to listen to. Her story's remarkable also, but it's not a self-help book. It's a collection of her stories. She's gone through a lot of shit. But there's like takeaways from every chapter, and there's lots of life lessons to be learned. So I would definitely say giving that a read is
good.
worth it.
I like that. I'll
Yeah.
definitely add that to my list.
Yeah.
I don't have a solid recommendation today. I've not really watched anything great that I loved. I did just start For All Mankind, which is slow. It's getting in there. But my recommendation is going to be that I want people to read a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just piggyback off your book recommendation, because in the last 3 to 4 years, I've tried to read one more book than I did the year before. And
I like
last
that.
year was the first year that I read less than the year before. Just pandemic. I binged everything on Netflix,
Yep.
and I was depressed and everything. So, I think reading has heightened my sense of self and my worldview significantly, and I think nobody does it anymore because we're on our phones 24/7.
Yeah.
Nobody takes the time to put it down. So my biggest recommendation is for everyone to start a book list and start reading. Maybe we'll start a Wrong Advice Podcast book club.
I love
And,
that idea.
Might be something to come
I
down the
need
pike.
someone I need a book club to hold me accountable because I should read more. Like I definitely should read more.
All right, well, we've
So
got our
if
first
you-
member,
yeah.
Jessica Miller,
Yes.
in the Wrong Advice
Awesome. And then I'll
Podcast
have
book
to read because
club.
like no one wants to be that asshole
Yeah.
at book club
Oprah
that hasn't
who?
read. Yeah, that hasn't
It's
read the
my
book.
idea.
There we go.
Jess, it was awesome having you on.
Thank you for having
I
me.
love you. I'm so
Love you
glad
too.
to see how great you're doing, and this was so much fun. Thanks.
Awesome. You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.